Wonderful. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're dialing in from. I'm excited to be presenting today. My name is Robin Tasca. I am a communications specialist at iSpark, which is a research center within UMass Chan Medical School. I am a white middle-aged woman with graying hair, and I wear 2 cochlear implants. Little glitchy on my end. We're having some rain today. Anyways, today I'm presenting on accessibility by design, creating inclusive electronic products. We all know that accessibility is extremely important, and it is imperative that you create your electronic products to be as accessible as possible for everybody to be able to enjoy them. Today I'm going to be focusing on some of the more interesting modalities that we use and employ here within iSpark. But before I get into the nitty-gritty, why accessibility matters. It's a legal requirement, as we all know, part of Section 508 Rehabilitation Act, Title II of the American Disabilities Act, and then the new, or I should say revised, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. The newest guidelines are 2.2, and they are out, and they are going to start being heavily enforced in early spring. So here at iSpark and also UMass as a whole, we take accessibility and accessible content as imperative. Our university has an internal task force that was launched by the President's Office to create a full website and design toolkit for staff and researchers to use to make sure that all of their content is accessible as possible. We have dedicated staff and faculty trainings throughout the year, and we also have specialized software that we are able to use, particularly with our website, which is one of the aspects that I am focused on a regular basis. So these are tools that the university created to help its employees be the best that they can when it comes to accessibility. So at iSpark, in our centers and research, we employ different modality methods, and one of them is comics. Comics are a lot of fun. It is a group of drawings and a narrative sequence. It is applicable to all ages, young and old. Enjoy having comics. They're very popular these days. It's an easy way to comprehend written information in a nice small chunks. And some of the key accessibility tips that you want to consider when you are utilizing comics is you want to design them as simple panels. You want to make sure you have a lot of white space, and then you also want to make sure that you create a written transcript so that those who are unable to see it, because essentially it is a graphic, that they have a written, well-defined transcript that their screen reader can utilize so that they can understand and visualize in their mind what the comic is portraying. This is an example of a comic that we created on managing cognitive design in one of our research centers about 1.5 years ago. And if you have any questions as I present, please drop them in the chat, as they mentioned earlier, and I will do my best to respond to them. Another modality that is extremely popular these days is podcasts. It is a program, music or talk, available in a digital format. Podcasts are not only audio podcasts, but they are also video podcasts that are extremely popular with TikTok and with YouTube. According to TV Eyes, there are 4.5 million podcasts worldwide, which I thought was really interesting, and they have approximately 584 million listeners, which is amazing. There's podcasts out there for everybody. One of the podcasts we use is we have something called Stay Tuned, which is supporting transition age youth, transitioning from young adulthood, high school to post-school, whether it's going into college or going into the workforce directly. So that is what this particular center that we have under our umbrella and their podcast is really good. It has two of our young adult staff that are managing it, and we have a variety of those with lived experience as well as researchers that are the podcast guests that we have. Anyways, the way we produce our podcast is we are recording them as a video on YouTube, and we also have audio using Spotify. We make sure that there is a downloadable written transcript that accompanies every episode, so that not only can people watch it on YouTube, turn on the closed caption if they so choose to, they can hear it. They can also download a written transcript and have their screen reader read it, or they can, if somebody would like, they can read it themselves as they are watching or listening. We use a software that's readily available called Descript to help us produce the captioning and the transcript. There we go. All right. Social media is another very popular modality, as we all know. There's a variety of different platforms that are out there. We have, a few years ago, we created 5 tips on how to effectively have your social media posts be accessible. Hashtags, it is interesting. Hashtags come and go in popularity with the algorithms of the different social media platforms, but they still do have a use. When you are using hashtags, you want to make sure that you are what's called camel case, which is essentially sentence case, where each word has the first letter capitalized. It makes it extremely easy to then read the hashtag. I personally find it very easy because when they're all lowercase for me, and I don't have any visual problems, it's just hard for my brain to process what's being said, especially if there are multiple captions. So hashtagging is a great one. Using emojis, that's another one. We all love emojis. They're a lot of fun to use, and they are a great visual to describe how you're feeling. But when you do use them, you should use them sparingly, and you should use them either at the beginning or the end, because the screen reader reads what the emoji is. So if you're using it in the middle of a sentence, it actually breaks up the sentence, and it kind of makes the sentence not make sense because it's reading what the emoji is in the middle of the sentence. So it can actually distort what your intended meaning is. You want to make sure you're using plain language and that you know your platform audience. There's a ton of information out there regarding social media platform audience and best ways to maximize those, but it is important to always go simple in using plain language. Alt text, you always want to make sure that all of your images are alt text, for those with screen readers are able to see what, or to visually understand what the image is. When you're using alt text, please do not put a sales pitch for whatever it is you're trying to describe. That's not the intent of alt text. Alt text is supposed to describe the image so that somebody utilizing a screen reader can imagine what that is in their mind's eye. If you are using an image that is strictly text, that is not recommended, but if you have to do that, then simply have your alt text say, this image is all text, and then type out the entire text that is in your image, which is another reason why you shouldn't use all text in your images, because that would be very tedious. But if you have to do that, that is the best way to alt text all text that's in an image. And then closed captioning, it is so important to closed caption your videos and your reels. There's so many different software options out there, and a lot of the social media platforms allow you to do it right as you are uploading the video, which is fabulous. They're getting better and better. One of the things I do want to note, when you are closed captioning, you have the ability to put where you want the closed caption to go. Put it at the top. Don't put it at the bottom. Why? Because if you have a commentary that goes with your video, that commentary would be written right on top of the closed caption, and no one would be able to read it. I am a gardener by passion and hobby, and I do follow a couple of gardening reels, and they always put this very long caption on top of the closed caption, and it makes it very difficult for me. I actually have sent messages to them telling them that that is a bad practice, and 2 of them have changed their ways. So I was very excited about that because I love to be able to see their videos as they're describing what they're trying to do, and read it as well, because closed captioning is very important for me. So it is extremely important. And nowadays, closed captioning is not just for the deaf and hard of hearing. There are studies that have confirmed that the Gen Zs are using closed captions more and more, and they may not need it for their own accessibility. It's just their personal preference. So that is another reason why it's so important. Social media, continuing, there are some great resources out there. One of my absolute favorite is a website called Accessible Social, run by Alexis, who is a digital media manager for the University of Chicago. She was in Florida and she just moved to Chicago, I believe. But her website is completely free. She has a great little book that you can purchase for $15 from her website, and it is every single thing you could ever possibly think of or want to know how to do regarding social media and being accessible. So that I highly recommend, and what's even greater is that it's free. Her entire website and every resource on it is free, which is just amazing because she values the importance of accessibility. We created within our center a tip sheet as well, and Dee was kind enough to drop them in, so thank you very much on that. And then the last thing, because I know that there is time, written products. So we all do written products. Back in the day, written products were digital pieces that we would have printed and we would take to various conferences and hand out. Nowadays, with conferences being virtual, we do a lot of written products, but turn them into a digital PDF and have it on our website or some other way to disseminate into the World Wide Web. It is important to keep these tips in mind. You want your structure. You want to go from top to bottom, left to right. Just like we were taught to read when we were in grammar school. You want to make sure that it is plain language, again, so that it is simple for people to understand. Not everyone understands some of the nuances with the various research that we do for those of us that are researchers. Large print, larger is better. I do not have vision problems, but I'm finding now that I am middle-aged that I needed to bump up the font size on captioning, so that is important to have it as a large print, lots of white space so that it's easy for to see and for your brain to process. Strong color contrast, so really big with the dark and the light. Creating alternative formats, such as having it in different foreign languages, having it in ASL. And then when you are creating the product and you're going to make it a PDF, make sure that you have it flagged that the downloadable version is set for screen reader accessibility. And then always use, if you're creating something in Word or PowerPoint, use the built-in accessibility checker, and then set it up for being a downloadable PDF, and everything will be accessible for those that would benefit from it. All right. Are there any questions? I see in the chat that John Kramer, that's a good question. He says, my understanding is that PDFs are really bad about accessibility. Not really. PDFs are basically just a locked digital version of what has been created. So think of it as many images put together, for lack of a better description. And it is whatever way you created the PDF. So your PDF has to start out as something before a PDF. It has to be a Word document. It has to be a PowerPoint document. It has to be an Excel document. That was not me. If you're finding ones that are out there that are not accessible, it's because they didn't make it accessible on the onset. And then when you save it as a PDF, it doesn't become accessible because it wasn't made accessible. So hopefully that makes sense. And John did respond that it made sense. So are there any other questions, comments? It looks like Ryan's asking a question on a report or presentation. Do you lean toward tagging more images or marking decorative? Me personally, I tag everything with alt text. I very rarely mark it as decorative because that's really a bad practice. If it's an image of, and I'm just going to use this as an example, a medical doctor is doing a presentation on heart conditions and they have a picture of a heart. If they just mark it as decorative, then those who are paying attention, who are seeing this presentation, aren't going to understand that this picture of the heart with the 5 valves corresponds with the language, with the text that's on his screen. So you're doing a real disadvantage to those with screen readers by marking everything as decorative. Decorative really should only be if you have like rainbow waves or just a funky line that is not that's adding a visual aesthetic, but not a point to the text on a presentation. Brooke is asking a question, for example, the gray rectangle graphics on your presentation, would those be marked as decorative? Yes, in that case, I would mark those as decorative because they're not serving a direct purpose to the text. I'm just reading all the chat. Okay. How would you describe, so Shirley Madwell asked, how would you describe a logo for the state of DOH? Unfortunately, Shirley, I don't know what DOH is. So I would need to know what that is in the logo in order. Department of Health. Which Department of Health? I believe every state has a Department of Health and they might be different visuals. New York State Department of Health. I'm assuming NYS stands for New York State, DOH for New York State Department of Health. I will look and I will find out. Really, you want to try and if you're looking for just in general, you want to try and describe to the best of your ability what's in the image, what's in the visual. I mean, if you're absolutely can't and there's nothing you can do, when in doubt, you can mark it as decorative. But again, that makes it difficult for the folks that are trying to, you know, use their mind's eye to visualize something. Mm-hmm. And then Janet asked, and I think I'm done after this question because I don't want to go into other people's time. Janet did ask, is there an issue with text presented in tables still a problem? For example, information from government statistics. Yes, tables are still a nightmare for screen readers and they show up as images and require alt text. Excel has not figured out a way to solve that problem. Yes, I agree, Janet. So when it's possible, try not to use tables. If you do have to use tables, describe them as in detailed as possible. Luckily, today, most alt text, you can have like 3,000 characters. And I appreciate everybody's time. In the chat is my contact information. I am happy and available to chat anytime about accessibility. And thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Robin. And I did want to scroll up a little bit. This, for those of you who joined late, I'm Kathleen Murphy. I'm your moderator this afternoon, and I direct the center sponsoring this conference, the Center on Knowledge Translation for Disability and Rehabilitation Research. So there was a discussion in the chat, you know, as we did the poll at the top of the hour, not everybody is familiar with knowledge translation, and we can definitely assume that not everybody who's joined us today is super familiar with all disability accommodations either. So someone was asking, could alt text be used instead of a transcript, or do those achieve two different things. And Robin's colleague, Dee Logan, gave a very helpful answer. A transcript is a full text version of audio or audiovisual content, while alt text is a short descriptive image for short descriptive text for images or other non-text elements. So transcripts cover the entire spoken and non-spoken audio in a media file, especially particularly useful for those who can't hear the audio, whereas alt text describes the function and content of a single image for those who cannot see it. There's also, kind of riffing here, but some people will, in addition to just transcribing the audio, depending on what is being, if the audio is accompanied with visuals, like say particularly when there's a narrative, like you're watching a movie, right? So there might, just as you see, if you've turned on captions, and you might see like soft music plays in the background, or, we hear a bomb explode outside. So that you might sometimes see, even in a transcript, that those visual descriptions are embedded. So that's a whole other like fun aspect of making various products accessible. So scrolling back up, Agnes Wong, congratulations. You asked our most commonly asked question ever in all of our events. So we are super grateful to Neidler, who funds us not only to do this live conference, but also to take the time to archive it. So all of the presentations, we have one outstanding that still needs what they call 508 remediation, and that's referring to a specific clause of legislation to make it accessible to people who use screen readers. But we will notify everybody who registered for this conference when that archive is up. So we try not to send all the slides and set up the archive right away, because I'm guilty of this as well. Sometimes if that's what happens, and people are like, you know what, I'm just going to flip through the slides and I'm not really going to go to this event. So, we'd like to think there's a value add to being here, because we don't necessarily, it kind of depends on the volume of what happens in this chat. We're not necessarily going to save all this chat. So that's definitely a value add to being here in person, is that you're seeing all of this chat. Let me see. Okay, then people are talking about Descript software. And Robin, could you just recap again, for sometimes people multitask, what does Descript software do?
Yes, I can, and I'm actually going to go back to the slide. So Descript software, I don't use it personally. The members who are responsible for the reels on our team actually use it, but I did ask that question because I knew that people would ask. So Descript is a user-friendly video and audio editing software, and it is meant for people without formal training. So you do not have to be a video expert. You do not have to be one of these Hollywood editors. Anyone can use Descript. It is a fee-based app on the internet that you can use on the phone, or a web-based app. It is a nominal fee. I think we pay, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it's around $100 for a year. It's a very low cost value platform that we use. It is good for remote collaboration and co-editing on multiple devices.
So we do at KTDRR have some people who are actually using this software, and one of them is Amanda Seagroves, and she has offered to join this conversation. Amanda?
Yeah, so,
Fabulous. Thank you, Amanda.
yeah. So yeah, Robin, when you mentioned Descript, I was like, yeah, it really is a very good software. So I'll tell you what I like to use it for. So let's say if you're creating like a reel or like a video for like social media, or just like a video in general, what is really cool about Descript, especially now, is that it's using a lot of AI functionality. So what you can do is you can take your video, your MP4 file, and you can upload it into Descript, and it will auto generate captions and a transcript for you. So I will say that it does a really good job, but as a human, you do need to kind of go through, and it allows you to edit the captions and the transcript. And what's really nice is that it especially when you're adding captions to a video, it sort of auto times those for you. So it really cuts out a lot of labor involved in like manually adding captions to a video. So I cannot honestly, Descript is so worth the time and money that you may invest. If you're making reels and you want to make sure they're compliant, Descript is the best. Really, it is. I mean, it does a really good job. Little bit of editing you're going to have to do, but it does a pretty good job of just auto doing it. And it can handle like 5-minute videos, 10-minute videos. And it does pretty good. Yes, it does, Deidre. Yep, it does. It allows you to remove pauses and tighten it up a little bit. It's not like a comprehensive video editor, but it does have really good capabilities.
Thank you, Amanda, for sharing that. Yes, you're absolutely right. I am very proud that our team uses Descript. As a deaf person, I find it very helpful so that I can get the transcripts of our podcast.